Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the New Jersey governor's race in the state of New Jersey and what it's looking like for us at the moment. And, a Democratic stronghold, New Jersey, I believe Joe Biden won the state by around 14 points. I actually forgot to pull that up before I started this video. But we're going to cover this race because this is just a year after Joe Biden won the presidential election. I'm sorry about that. And a recent poll came out showing that Governor Murphy is leading his Republican challenger by 11 points in New Jersey in the governor's race. And before I continue, I wanted to also point out something. I know I have been covering this race constantly, but I am going to point out this because I forgot to in my last video because I filmed it just before the last poll was released, and I think it's important to film this in this video. So the Fox News recent poll for Glenn Youngkin has, in one poll for likely voters, has Glenn Youngkin up by 8%. And remind you, Fox News may lean right-winging in their coverage, but their polls are not right-leaning. They're actually very moderate, and maybe even a little bit Democratic-leaning. But other than that, I found that interesting, and registered for voters say 48% to Terry McAuliffe at 47%. And the margin of error on this poll is 3%. And at 3%, Glenn Youngkin would be at 50%, still leading Terry McAuliffe by 5 percentage points, which I find to be quite amazing. Now, I don't think Glenn Youngkin will win this race by 5 points, but it is definitely a good sign for him in this race, and a good sign going into Tuesday. But back to the New Jersey race. These are there are only two gubernatorial elections happening in 2021, and both Democratic. The Democratic governor at this moment, Phil Murphy, is leading his Republican challenger. And you're probably asking yourself, well, why are you filming this video if he's leading by such a big margin? But the thing is we have to look at Biden's approval rating. And it's drifted so much within the past few months and weeks as well. And this brings us to where we are today. New Jersey, I don't think will flip. I do think Virginia will. I do think that ultimately Glenn Youngkin will be the next governor of Virginia. But we're talking about New Jersey today. I don't think it'll flip, but I am going to film this video because it could. It very well could. I'm not saying it can't, but I don't think it will happen. In another recent poll, it has Murphy up by 9 points, which is maybe not the best situation, but it is a solid margin for Governor Murphy of the state of New Jersey. And, this race just continues to be less focused on, really, as the Virginia gubernatorial election is the one that everyone is really looking at throughout this election cycle, as Glenn Youngkin has just suddenly took a really unthinkable lead in the governor's election. So this race has kind of went on backtrack recently, and I think it still deserves coverage. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about that today. And another thing that I wanted to point out. I'm sorry. If this will go away, I can show you. In New Jersey, they haven't reelected a Democratic governor in 44 years. And Governor Murphy says he'll break the curse. And as you can see, with Governor Murphy here is former President Barack Obama. And I'm not sure when, but I'm almost positive that former President Obama campaigned with Phil Murphy. And, really, I think something to point out here is that Democrats are getting scared. Because if they lose Virginia, that's a bad sign. But if they lose Virginia and New Jersey, that's a really bad sign for the Democrats. And, I think it's something to really look at, because these two races are going to tell us what the 2022 midterm elections are going to be like. If Youngkin pulls off this race, like I believe he will, that's going to be a bad sign for Democrats. But if Murphy is able to not hold on to his race either, and we have two Republican wins in both of these states for the governorships, that definitely will be a bad sign for Democrats going into 2022. So this isn't just about who's going to be the governor of the state, but also looking at a year from now, because in a year we will have all of the House of Representatives seats up for grabs again, and we will also have United States Senate seats up for grabs again. And at this moment, I think that the Republicans will take control of the House of Representatives, yet I'm not sure about the United States Senate. I'll start covering those races as we get closer to them, but really after these two New Jersey and Virginia races are over, I will start covering the 2022 midterm elections. But something that's just interesting in here is the really amount of attention that the Virginia gubernatorial election has been getting, but not the New Jersey one. And I think part of that is these recent polls that are showing Governor Murphy up by 9 points, or Governor Murphy up by, I'm sorry, I missed it. Where's my other poll? I'm sorry about that. By 11 points in the other poll. So, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because, if we go back to Virginia, just for a moment at least, if we look just around, the beginning of October, Glenn Youngkin was still, he may have been in a better position, but he was still down by quite a lot to Terry McAuliffe, right? And, the same thing could happen to Phil Murphy. Even though we are just 4 days out, the polls can be wrong. There's so many things that can be wrong, and this race needs to be covered as well. I'm not saying that New Jersey is going to flip. Like I said earlier on in the video, I don't think it will, but I do think Virginia will. And I think that, you can focus a little more on Virginia than you can New Jersey. But I do think that people should be watching this race, because it could be a sign for Democrats in 2022, especially if Murphy loses or wins by a smaller margin. Let's say, for example, Murphy wins by 2 points. I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll win by a little bit more if he wins. But let's say he wins by 2 points. That's a bad sign for Democrats, especially going into these polls that say he's going to win by 9 points, 11 points. That's a bad sign for the governor of New Jersey, and a bad sign for Democrats, because it shows that their policies aren't implementing well with the American people at the moment. And Joe Biden's approval rating is shifting the Democrats in a negative way. And that's something to watch out for in those midterms as well, because that's going to be something that is ultimately going to decide these midterm elections. And I just think it's interesting, and we need to keep an eye on it, because, if the Democrats aren't careful, they could lose 2 governor's elections, and then they could lose the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. And Virginia, remind you, Joe Biden won by 10 points. And we're now talking about, most likely, the next Republican governor of the state of Virginia. And New Jersey, it's even crazier that we're having to talk about this, because New Jersey was won by, I believe it was over 14 percentage points by Joe Biden. But we're still talking about this governor's race, because it could ultimately be closer than we think at this point. Going back to Virginia, because I feel like I jump around to the two, but going back to Virginia for a minute, another recent poll was from a poll October 27th through the 29th, which is a Republican right-leaning poll, but shows Glenn Youngkin up 49%, Terry McAuliffe at 46%. And if we go to some of these other Republican polls, they have them up 2%, and one even has them tied. But we haven't seen in a while, at least, a poll that shows him up 3 percentage points. Because 3 percentage points, normally we can take about 2 to 3% off for a Republican right-leaning pollster. So that puts Glenn Youngkin still at either 46% tied with Terry McAuliffe, or 47%, a point up from Terry McAuliffe. And I just think that this race is ultimately going to go to the Republican. I think it's going to go to Glenn Youngkin. I think he'll win the race. But again, I could be wrong. And like I said in my last video, I will come on here if I am. But back to the New Jersey race is ultimately, in this race, there's not a whole lot to talk about at this point. Barack Obama and Democrats are are kind of flipping out at this point, and they're like, okay, we've got to get top names in here. We've got to get the votes out. And I think New Jersey will stay blue. I think that Governor Murphy will win re-election. But, I could be wrong. And like I said, if I am on that, I will come on here and I will tell you that. But, at this point, I think he'll win it. And I think that Democrats should really be focused on the Virginia race, because I think it's going to be a hard one for them to win at this point, especially with recent polls. I'm not saying it's impossible, but at this point, I would say it's a lot less likely than I would have 2 weeks ago. I would have said it's about a 50-50, or maybe even a 55% for Democrats, 45% for Republicans 2 weeks ago. But, so much has changed since then, and, we're just 4 days, really, out from this election, and that's crazy that we could see Glenn Youngkin as the next governor of Virginia, and, I know some people will be happy about that, some people will not, but I do think he'll win, and I think Phil Murphy will win. And I'll give a little more insights on this on my video Monday. I'll be filming a video on Monday going more in detail on the Virginia race, probably more focusing on the Virginia race in that video, but I'll really be maybe even telling percentage point-wise on what I think these two races could look like. But I appreciate you all for watching. This video is a little shorter than I had planned, but I appreciate you all for watching. Thank you, and let me know what you thought of the video down below. I will try to get more details for future videos. This one was just kind of a random video that I decided to film really quick, and I'm actually filming it late at night, but it'll go up tomorrow on the 30th. So, yeah, thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them down below. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And let me know what you think of these two races, who you think is going to win the Virginia race and who you think is going to win the New Jersey race. And I will talk to you all later.